Can't ask for more than that, can you? And so this morning I'm going to talk to you, or us, about a Bible story that maybe is even more well known than the Christmas story. A Bible story that is just everywhere you go in the world. You see kiddies' books with this Bible story. I wonder if you can guess what might be the most widely known Bible story probably in the world. Michael? Noah's Ark. Spot on. First time. Well done. Give him a round of applause. That was very, very good. Took 10 minutes to get the right answer in Biggin Hill when I did this. You know, you've all seen books. You've probably got books at home, if you've got kids, with the story of Noah's Ark. You know, this kind of houseboat with the giraffe's head pointing out of the roof. And it is one of the most widely known events in the history of mankind. The problem is, because it is so well known, it can become a bit of a fairy story for everybody. And it isn't just a kid's story. It's here in the scriptures. It's in Genesis chapter 6. If you have a Bible, you need to be finding that. We'll get to it in a minute. It's not just a kid's story. Actually, this is a real event with a very serious message for us and for the world around us. Noah is mentioned 14 times in the Bible outside of the story of Genesis, in Genesis chapter 6 through to 9. So he's mentioned 14 times. The flood is also mentioned several times in other passages in Scripture. Always when Noah is referred to, he is referred to as a real person, not some kind of mythical figure. And the event is always spoken of as a global flood, a real event. And I believe that. Jesus himself, the Son of God, said in Matthew's Gospel chapter 24, "As in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." And you will notice there Jesus is referring to Noah as a real historical figure, a real person. And Noah is, of course, if you know anything about the Gospels and you know anything about Jesus's lineage, his family history that is written for us in Matthew's Gospel and Luke's Gospel, right at the beginning of their story of Jesus, you will know that Noah is in Jesus' lineage. Here's something you may not have thought about. He's in your lineage and my lineage. In fact, if he hadn't existed, we wouldn't be here right now. So he's a real historical person. And you may say, "Oh, come on, Dave, you don't really believe that there was a global flood with a big boat that God saved, Noah and his family." Yeah, actually I do. I believe that. I believe it happened in history. I believe there is a lot of very good evidence to back up that as well. Now, I'm not a geologist, but I am interested in science. And I think there are some facts. I haven't got time to go through these in detail, but I think there are some facts that really confirm the historicity of the biblical flood very clearly. One of the things is the flood stories that you find all over the world. That's why I say this is possibly the most well-known biblical story, because actually you find all over the world, in all ages, you will find references to flood stories. In ancient Babylon, in Samaria, the Greeks, the Hindus, the Chinese, the Hawaiians, Mexicans, Eskimos, Aborigines, they all have their own version of a flood story which witnesses to a worldwide flood where common ancestors survived. Research has been done on these stories which shows that the further away from the Middle East you get, the more myth-like and the less realistic those stories are. The closer you get into the Middle East, the more those stories line up with the Bible story. So there are real similarities in these stories that point to the fact that it was a real event in the ancient history of mankind. And Bible commentators, particularly those who are experts in Hebrew, they note how the story in Genesis almost reads like a ship's log. It's like a captain writing his report of what happened, the number of days it rained, the number of days it didn't rain, the number of days the flood began to subside, and so forth. It reads a bit like a ship's log. And the Bible story is not myth-like and unreal. When you think about it, it tells us about Noah's sins and failures later on in the story as well. And all those things point to the reality of it. Second thing that I think points to the reality of a global flood is the geological evidence. Now, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I have listened to experts talking about this, particularly Dr. Andrew Snelling, who is a leading geologist, global guy, globally recognised as a leading geologist. He works for both Australia and America in geological research to do with oil deposits and things like that. And of course, oil deposits mean people are doing deep earth core samples these days, which is a more recent development. And the physical features of the Earth's terrain indicate that there was in the past a catastrophic event. The canyons, the craters, coal, caverns. You've got a huge one here, right where we are today in Gibraltar, there in the rock, huge cavern. The massive amounts of layered sedimentary rock, in other words, rock that was laid down by huge amounts of mud and silt, laid down very quickly where fossils were trapped very quickly and fossilised. And if you know anything about geology, you will know that the kind of bedrock that our planet has right down deep, the what they call the Precambrian rocks, there's no fossils in those rocks at all. Suddenly you get into the Cambrian layers, where you've got these layers that were laid down originally by mud and silt and sand, and you've got fully formed fossils of all kinds of creatures, and they're fully developed. There they are, bang, suddenly in the mud. Just as if great amounts of silt and mud and volcanic lava and so forth was suddenly spilt all over everything very, very quickly. Some of the fish that are fossilised have still got other fish in their mouth where they were actually fossilised while they were eating. And jellyfish are fossilised, which you have to fossilise a jellyfish very, very quickly. It has to be trapped and pressurised very, very quickly, otherwise it just decomposes. So all these things show us that there's good evidence that probably at one time or another in the history of the world there was this massive catastrophic flood. And the interesting thing is, even if you go to the top of Mount Everest, you will find fossilised creatures. Quite extraordinary. And of course these layers of mud and silt would have been bent by the huge pressures of the water and probably the tectonic plates on the Earth's surface moving around under the extraordinary catastrophe that happened that caused the whole Earth to be flooded. So up in Holland, some Christians have built a life-size replica of Noah's Ark, just to give you an idea of what it would have looked like with people around it in boats. It was a big thing. In fact, up until the 1880s, it was the largest sea-going vessel that had ever been built. It was massive. And what do I do? Oh, I know. Shit. I might be interested just to see one other picture. This is a picture. Is that upside down? No. You might be interested to see that. That just gives you a little picture of what it looks like inside. What you can't see, unfortunately, because it's a little bit dark, is just here and here are two full-size elephants. So it gives you some idea of how massive the ark would have been and how Noah would have had room easily for two of every kind of animal. Not notice every species, but every root kind of animal. There's also some evidence this is still being developed, and I wouldn't say it's fully proven by any means at all, but there has been for many, many years, people have known about this. Up in the mountains on the border of Turkey and Iran, in the Ararat Mountains, there has been this huge boat shape in the mud. It's a very muddy, boggy area, but it has actually around these walls, these are actually made of vertical wooden timbers in the earth with horizontal planking around those timbers, and the fossilised timbers are still there. Now, the authorities don't like you doing research in Turkey and Iran. The local authorities are very careful and say